think that he's been critical of pretty much every American foreign policy decision since World War II, including World War II. I mean, really, including World War II, right? I mean, he has on guests who have said repeatedly, not just one, multiple guests who have said that either America took the wrong side in World War II or the true villain of World War II was Winston Churchill. He himself has said, what did Churchill actually gain? Because now London is a terrible place, which is sort of like saying that there's litter in the streets of New York, therefore the Enlightenment was bad.
Hey folks, I'm the other Barack coming to you live and direct here from the Holy Land in Israel. This is a video of Ben Shapiro talking about the one and only Tucker Carlson on trigonometry. Oh yes, here we go.
We talked about Tucker, and one of the things is quite clear that, as you say, there's been a direction of travel change very significantly since he left Fox and started doing what he's doing. He's hosted a whole number of people that clearly are pushing a particular worldview. I think that's fair to say. What do you think he's up to with that?
I don't like to attribute inauthenticity to people, so I will assume that it's reflective of his actual worldviews. I think that, just looking at the guests that he's had and sort of the views that he has laundered, because that seems to be his mode of doing business. It's that he very rarely says the thing that he wants to say out loud. A few times he will. Like, for example, in the Fuentes interview, he'll say that Christian Zionists have a brain disease, right? That's him actually saying the thing that he thinks, then sort of trying later to half buy it back as he realized he crossed a politically inconvenient line for him.
I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody. Because what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian.
But mostly what he does is he has on people, and then that's fascinating. That's very interesting. Now, of course, Tucker is perfectly capable of carrying out a very adversarial interview, as he did with, for example, Ted Cruz. And so pretending that he's not doing that thing is, I think, insulting to the intelligence. And the right would not accept it in any other context. If a reporter has on Kamala Harris and asks her 0 difficult questions except how brat she is, then we are rightly going to assume that reporter is pro-Kamala Harris, right? And it's not doing their actual journalistic job, and you can sort of intuit views that way. Guest selection is definitely a big one. How you treat your guests is a big one. We can sort of intuit the views. I think that the Tucker's general belief from looking at the way he has done his sort of foreign policy talk is that it's not just that America's overextended, it's that America is a sort of nefarious force in the world, and wherever American support for allies happens, then it must be the result of domestic manipulations, and that the most important thing right now is to essentially go autarkic, to bring, I think this is the most charitable read, to bring, American resources home, to not be involved in the world in any way, and most importantly, that anybody who opposes this agenda is a tool of a foreign agenda, or is a malign actor, which is the thing that differentiates, I think, some of how Tucker does his business from others. I think Tucker is very fond of using emotivism, where he attributes motive to people in order to not even debunk the argument, but simply to just say, they're a bad person, they hate you, they want to hurt your children, and I despise them. I despise them comes up a lot on his show, which I've always found kind of strange. Like, I don't know why that's an argument. Why are your feelings even sort of relevant to the point that you're making? It's a sort of strange political take. I despise. I mean, who cares? And I despise lots of things. I mean, broccoli is not my favorite. Like, of what relevance is this?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. And whenever I hear Tucker, I listen to him, there does seem to be it kind of reminds me of like a failed romantic. He had this romanticized idea of America and what America was. He's now fallen out of love. And like a guy who's gone through his first breakup, he looks at his girlfriend and goes, oh, she's a massive bitch.
I mean, I think that I think that probably he would agree with that on America's foreign policy. I think he talks about this openly about, for example, the war in Iraq, but I think that he's been critical of pretty much every American foreign policy decision since World War II, including World War II. I mean, really, including World War II, right? I mean, he has on guests who have said repeatedly, not just one, multiple guests who have said that either America took the wrong side in World War II or the true villain of World War II was Winston Churchill. He himself has said, what did Churchill actually gain? Because now London is a terrible place, which is sort of like saying that there's litter in the streets of New York, therefore the Enlightenment was bad. It's like clearly he thinks something went fundamentally wrong with the West around the time that World War II happened. And, why he's saying that and what is the viewpoint that defines that. I think he's sort of left that undefined, so I'll leave that undefined. All I'll say is I think that it's untrue. I think that some of the views, many of the views of the people that he brings on run counter to traditional American conservatism at the very, very least.
Mm-hmm. Look, the brilliant thing about social media and podcasting is that there's no gatekeepers. The terrible thing about social media and podcasting is there's no gatekeepers. And when you look at people like Tucker and you look at people like Candace, when they were in large organizations and they had to report to people, there were guardrails and they couldn't go off the reservation. Whereas now they can go off the reservation and we've seen what's happened.
I mean, again, I think that it's not even a matter of gatekeepers as much as it is of a willingness to sort of be checked by people and listen to maybe better judgment. Because I think that there's a case to be made that many of the gatekeepers have sucked, and getting rid of some of the gatekeepers was good. But I think that what is required of consumers of information now is significantly more than was required of consumers of information 15, 20 years ago.
You have to be your own gatekeeper now.
Yeah, and most people are not really good at that. It's not even a matter of qualification, it's just they're not very good at it. Because again, you're consuming information like a fire hose, and it's coming at you on social media from an algorithm that I think is quite perverse in places like X or on Reddit or wherever you are, TikTok. And so unless you are a very informed person to begin with, it's very difficult to know what sources to trust. And that's when you get into a bit of confirmation bias. And that's where we get back to sort of the original point that we were making, which is the people who pander most strongly to your sensibilities, which is that you have been wronged by some sort of conspiratorial coterie of people who are aiming to crush you underfoot. That's a very flattering idea, because then the idea is that you're not responsible for any of your own actions, and that all solutions are just simple if only you had the power to implement them.
And you also get incentivized to create this type of content, because the more of this kind of conspiratorial content, let's just call it that you make, the more likely people are to engage with it, because they're thinking to themselves, oh, this is interesting, this is dangerous, I want to hear what he's
well, secrets being uncovered. Whenever a secret is being uncovered, that's much more interesting than somebody saying, hey, there's no secret, everybody's bad at their job. which, by the way, is actually significantly more accurate. In virtually all circumstances, people are just not good at things who think they were going to be good at things, and then the results are bad. But it's much more sexy if you say, no, there's a nefarious secret. There's a group that meets in secret and they get together just to f you. Yeah. Right? That's flattering to your sense of self. It's flattering to your sense of the world. And now you're part of an informed group of people who really know the thing that nobody else knows.
Well, that's very true. And I think another piece, and I wrote about this on my Substack, I don't know if you saw, but it was about what's happened to young men in particular over the last 10, 15 years, where we had this woke period where if you were a straight white man, there was dog shit, and then straight white men a lot of levels below that. And particularly for a generation who neither created a system where men may have had some advantage or white people may have had some advantage, nor benefited from that. If you were a 15-year-old Zoomer, you were being told the future's female, all men are trash, etc., while actually your life outcomes and the education system, which was overwhelmingly not favorable to people like you that you were going through, you can kind of see why they're angry and resentful.
I mean, I totally agree why they're angry and resentful. And this, again, gets back to a point. Diagnosis is easy. Prognosis and cure is hard.
Yeah.
And so I totally agree that the sort of wokeism of the past 20 years has created, for example, the Fuentes movement. I mean, I talked about that openly on the show on Monday and in the piece that I wrote for the Wall Street Journal, is that basically the sort of woke left idea that white Christian men in particular were the scourge of the earth and thus had to be extirpated from public life, or at least disadvantaged in public life by the sort of Ibram X. Kendi. The only way to fix the injustices of the past is to engage in injustices in the present. I can see why that would drive a sort of white Christian identitarianism. I think that in order for that identitarianism to take place, it can't really be a Christian identitarianism, because Christianity, last I checked, and again, I'll let others who are more expert in this topic than I speak to this, is a system that distinguishes neither Jew from Greek nor slave from master. Right? I mean, the idea is that all are equal it's about individual equality was one of the key functions of Christianity. So you have to come up with kind of a pseudo-Christianity where, certain people are superior to other people. And I think that that's a really negative thing, which is why you've seen some systemic immunity to it among more traditional Christian groups, actually. But I think that the move that you see, it is understandable, but the normal curative to woke should be meritocracy. And that's a hard argument to make these days. Right? I mean, again, because meritocracy has an inherent suggestion, which is if you don't succeed, maybe it's at least partially or largely your fault. And that's a very hard sell to people. That's a very hard sell.
You know what I want to see, man? I'm tired of covering these videos of these journalists, press, media personnel talking about the other people who work in their entire field of journalists, press, and media personnel. I want to see a face-to-face conversation between Ben and Tucker. I want to have this game of, like, let's call it politics. And I'm not saying Ben's in the game. I'm not saying trigonometry's in the game. You know, Tucker is actually the one who denied a conversation with Ben Shapiro. I want to see a room with Ben, with Candace, with Douglas, with Nick. I say Douglas isn't Douglas Murray because he's also somebody who's calling out these people who are just inviting such violent, like terrible rhetoric to society. I mean, like, you got people who are changing their Instagram and X bios saying like the nastiest Christians saying the nastiest things about Christianity. And Candace is like religiously like vomiting out this awful, awful conspiracy about Charlie Kirk and that his wife was a part of a plot to kill her husband. And that the Lord, it's all such nonsense that we are driven away from the principles of looking at conflict objectively. And while I don't always agree with Ben about his political viewpoints and where he stands, and I'm not supposed to, you're not supposed to either. You should never be just religious to one person. If you are, then you're a fucking cult member. What I do like about Ben is his whole thing about facts don't care about your feelings, because he is simply objective. He even says it in here how Tucker will always say, I despise him. It shouldn't matter that you despise him. It should matter that you have an objective opinion about something and that you should absolutely leave your subjectivity out at the door. What's so interesting is that these Gen Z young kids love it when people bring their subjective opinion and emotion into a debate about a conflict because they, for some reason, they are called to that. Now, Ben is not willing to waver from how he operates as a human being and how he sees journalism, and I don't think he should. But it's just insane that kids want a good story. Kids don't want facts and information. They also want someone at the stature of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens to fucking run their mouths. And why do I know that? Because Gen Z and these kids don't respect their fucking elders. They don't respect other people. They don't respect the woman cleaning the street. They don't respect the maid. They don't respect the fucking bus driver. They don't respect these people because they're getting it from other high influences who are telling you that fucking we should be talking to people like this. Yeah, pro-Palestinians, you should literally say every Jew should die. How do I know that that's true? Because that is what's happening in the street. Death to Jews. Where does it come from? Believe it or not, it's coming from people like Tucker Carlson. Who? How do I know this? They listen to them. It is a simple fucking map that if you just threw it all out there and you looked at all of it, it would streamline down to how people at the bottom, how they feel about Israel-Palestine or whatever's going on in America. And you have to trace it up from where they're pulling their information from. It's as clear as day. And Tucker is still not willing to get into a conversation with Ben Shapiro. Folks, I think that's the most telling thing in the world. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for all your support. There are links right below if you would want to help support this channel. And also, please do not forget to subscribe and also make sure you press that bell icon so you are always notified. Here's a note from me. Here are 4 ways you can help us grow if you believe in our mission. On Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal, you can directly contribute to helping this message grow and reach more people across the world. If you want to join the inner circle, join our Patreon with different tiers, and of course, our Discord community, which is free with people from all across the world. The links to every single one are in the description. And last but not least, to the Other Brock community, I love you. Ani ohev otchem. I'll see you guys next time.